Mask of a Diva, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 4, 1994. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Author, Eric Aust. For all the divas, operatic and otherwise. Chapter 16. The next morning, Daphne and I were having breakfast outdoors in the gazebo. After the turmoil of the previous night, peace had been restored with the help of Mother Nature. A mild morning sun, a quiet blue ocean, a soft, cool breeze. And by Parker's breakfast spread, warm brioche, crushed raspberries, and freshly whipped butter. Daphne had just given the coffee maker its ritual plunge, but with a tranquil, almost reflective gesture that was in keeping with the morning calm. And then came from the open French doors of one of the second-story bedrooms a wild animal like shrieking. Cries and screams and wailings in a woman's voice. The howls of distress excited a flock of seagulls on the beach far below, and they took flight, squawking and cawing and further heightening the sense of alarm. I ran from the gazebo and rushed into the house and up the stairs. The vision from the doorway to Madame Ostinata's bedroom seemed to be frozen from some ancient period of time. Like an old daguerreotype, except in modern-day color and accompanied by the bestial cries of Mathilda the maid. Madama was lying on her bed in a rumpled cloud of blood-soaked cheeks. On one side of the bed stood Maestro Toscanelli, his face ashen and his body rigid. His two hands were held as if in holy supplication. In one hand was a large chopping knife, its blade red and sticky with blood. Bruce David was kneeling at the side of the bed, his torso thrown face down over the bloody sheets. His awkward position implied that he had either fainted or died there. All else in the room was still except for Mathilda, who stood at the foot of the blood-soaked bed, screaming savagely, barely pausing for breath. My skin went cold and damp, my eyelids fluttered, and I realized I had stopped breathing. I leaned against the door frame to gather my wits and keep myself from fainting. I forced my breathing to resume by taking deep, controlled breaths. In a few moments I recovered, but then the awful scene caused another more visceral response. Tummy squatters. Once again, the deliberate, slow breathing revived me and kept that one mingled bite of brioche, raspberries, and butter where it belonged. I heard Daphne coming up the stairs behind me. I turned and was about to warn her to keep away. Step back, don't look. But it was too late. She'd already entered the room and seen Madame Ostinata on the bed, her throat slashed open so deeply that the pale bones of her neck were visible even from the doorway, like ivory nubs amidst the soft, wet folds of bloody flesh. Daphne fainted in my arms. Her body was extremely light, like a small bird's, almost fragile. Parker was standing directly behind her. When he saw what was in the bedroom, he said, "I'd best call the police." I carried Daphne out to a divan in the hallway and laid her down. I elevated her legs slightly, then went to get a cold, wet towel to revive her, and through it all, Mathilda continued her wild screaming. Minutes later, Daphne regained consciousness and immediately instructed Parker and me to bring Mathilda from the bedroom into the hallway. Then she managed to administer a hypodermic sedative to the hysterical woman, and within moments the savage noises stopped. Back in the bedroom, the maestro remained rigidly fixed at Madama's bedside. Although he had dropped his big knife onto the bed, Bruce David remained draped over the dead woman's body. I went in and tried to pull him off, but his hands gripped tightly to the sheets. It was either catatonia or rigor mortis. I spoke quietly into his ear and told him he had to get off the bed. He whimpered. "Oh!" I suppose it was good news that he was still alive. The local police arrived and spent less than 2 minutes in Madame Ostinata's bedroom. The sergeant came up to Daphne and said, "Looks like we'll have to call in the big boys on this." "The Boston police?" said Daphne almost hopefully. "Yeah," said the sergeant. "Homicide. They'll know how to handle it." "What happened?" said Daphne. That's what I'd like to know, said the cop. Two of the witnesses in there are in shock. And the third one, you got sedated already, too. So they're all useless at the moment. I had to sedate her, said Daphne. Oh, I'm sure, said the cop, holding up his hand. But the way it stands now, I don't know what's going on here. He made a sour face toward the bedroom as though the dead soprano had shown exceedingly bad manners by getting herself murdered within his jurisdiction, and with an old man standing by and a younger man clinging to the sheets. But Daphne looked relieved, as if she knew the Boston police would conduct a bold, objective investigation without the long-standing bias of the local police. Still, it was odd how willingly the Abigail police had surrendered their control of the case. Perhaps they recalled their mishandling of another murder a while back, one connected to a chocolate company in Boston. Why bungle another one? Then again, folks in a country club town always called in someone else for the menial work. Painting the mansion, tending the landscape, sponging up the blood. The local sergeant had no way of guessing that he and his elite peacekeepers would soon be playing grunts to the homicide division of the Boston Police Department. But I did, because I had an intuition who was driving out from Boston that very moment at 90 miles an hour on Route 128 to head up the investigation of Marcella Ostinata's murder, and when I heard the throaty growl of a vintage Alfa Romeo pulling into Daphne's front driveway along with two Boston police cruisers and the county medical examiner's van, my heart raced a bit, and I knew I was right. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.